The phone buzzed on the coffee table, an Illinois number she hadn't seen in years. Captain Sarah Mitchell stared at it.
Sarah, your father died 3 days ago. The funeral is tomorrow. I thought you should know.
3 days, and no one called.
She opened the obituary online. Her father's photos smiled back. The list of survivors: Patricia, Robert, cousins, not her. Then a text from her mother. "Don't embarrass us. You weren't even close to him."
She knew it was a lie. Her knuckles whitened on the phone.
She walked to her closet. Her Marine dress uniform hung there, dark green and gold.
They called it a fantasy. Let them see what that fantasy built.
She would go, in uniform, not to beg, but to honor her father.
They would not erase her. Not from his obituary. Not from his memory.
Captain Mitchell called her commanding officer from her living room, her voice steadier than she felt.
Sir, my father passed away suddenly. I need emergency leave to attend the funeral tomorrow.
The leave was granted without question, and by evening she was packing her dress blues into a garment bag. She checked each crease, each medal, the white gloves resting on top, a ritual of preparation. Then she saw an old photo on her phone, her father on his fishing boat, one hand on the wheel, squinting into the sun.
He had asked about my medal. Tell me about it, Sarah. He was the only one who ever asked.
She remembered his voice, rough from engine smoke, as real as if he were standing in the room.
He believed in me, even when she buried his letters.
By morning, Sarah was on the interstate, her uniform bag on the passenger seat beside her. Her hometown appeared through the windshield, and with it, the weight of every unsaid word. She checked into a small motel on the edge of town, where nobody would notice a Marine in a rented sedan.
They said I abandoned them. Let them remember what abandonment really looks like.
She opened her laptop and scrolled through years of emails, stopping on one sent 3 years ago. Her father had written, "I'm sorry I wasn't stronger. I should have told them the truth about what you built."
What truth? He always sounded like he was wrestling with something bigger than me.
She remembered the weekly Skype calls from Kandahar, the way his face would light up when she appeared.
Patricia thought she broke us, but every Sunday he was there, waiting.
She stood before the mirror in full dress blues, the dark fabric absorbing the dim motel light.
Today, the truth walks into that church wearing captain's bars and a promise.
She left the motel, the morning sun catching the gold on her collar as she walked toward the church. She parked 2 blocks away on a tree-lined street, engine off, silence settling. Her polished shoes hit the pavement, each step a quiet rhythm toward the steeple.
Captain Mitchell kept her cover low, scanning the street. Not yet. Not here.
A stream of dark-clad figures moved toward the church doors. She fell in among them, anonymous. The organ hummed low as she slipped into a back pew, the wood creaking only slightly.
Steady. You're a captain. Steady.
At the front, Robert Mitchell walked to the pulpit, a thin stack of notes in his hand. 60 mourners folded their hands and turned their eyes toward him.
She knew this eulogy would not be a tribute. It would be a weapon.
Robert cleared his throat, and when he spoke, his voice was thick with practiced grief.
My father loved this town, this church, but the hardest cross he bore was his daughter Sarah. At 19, she packed a bag and chased some Marine fantasy, left us without a word. She never called, never visited. He went to his grave believing she abandoned him.
A sharp sob cut through the church. Patricia Mitchell buried her face in a white handkerchief. The mourners stirred, exchanging glances. A wave of sympathetic murmurs traveled the pews.
Fantasy. That's what they call 2 tours in Afghanistan. A bronze star on her chest.
In the front pew, Patricia shook with theatrical grief, loud enough for the back rows.
She's performing. Every tear is a calculated step in their lie.
Sarah's gloved hands tightened until the seams strained, knuckles bone white under the dim light.
But we, his true family, stood by him. We never wavered. We were here. My mother would like to share her heartbreak.
Patricia rose, handkerchief pressed to her lips, and walked to the pulpit like a queen approaching a throne.
Sarah was lost to us long before she left, troubled, unreachable. We begged her to get help. She chose a path of destruction. The Marines might have promised discipline, but she was already broken.
The mourners nodded, some dabbing their eyes. The narrative was seamless, each lie locking into place.
Every word is a knife aimed at his memory. They're not just erasing me, they're rewriting why he hurt.
The last call we got, the nurse said it was an overdose. We raced to the hospital, but she was already gone. Or so we thought.
A sharp intake of breath rippled through the pews. Several mourners turned to each other in shock.
They fed that lie to my father for 8 months, and he never once believed it.
Robert wrapped his arm around his mother at the pulpit, his grief a perfect mirror of hers. The organist struck a soft hymn. The congregation rose, voices unsteady as Robert and Patricia stepped down to the front pew.
Almost over. Then she could leave without a word.
Then, from the back of the church, a sound no one expected, a heavy creak, then light flooding in. The organ fell silent. Every head turned. Boot strikes, not one pair, but many, rhythmic, hard, in perfect unison. 21 Marines in dress blues filled the aisle, their white gloves iridescent, their gaze fixed ahead.
Her heart hammered against her ribbons. She knew that formation. She'd led it.
Gasps rippled through the pews. Patricia clawed the back of the front bench, her face draining. Robert's jaw hung open, his mother's arm forgotten. The Marines halted at the casket, boots snapping to a standstill. The gunnery sergeant at their head turned, his eyes scanning the congregation, and silence clamped down like a fist.
They'd come for him. They'd come for her father. And in a breath, everything would change.
The gunnery sergeant stepped forward, his voice splitting the silence like a blade.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here on behalf of the United States Marine Corps to render military funeral honors.
Patricia's hand flew to her pearls, her composure cracking like thin ice. Robert took a stumbling step back. The congregation stirred, necks craning as whispered questions cut through the thick air.
Her hands trembled. She'd attended dozens of funerals with honor guards, but never as the one they were looking for.
The sergeant's eyes swept the room a second time. Harder now, as if measuring every face.
We require Captain Mitchell to step forward and receive the flag of the United States.
Patricia's face contorted, a silent scream trapped behind her teeth. Robert's lips moved without sound. The mourners twisted in their seats, scanning the congregation. Whispered, "Captain Mitchell," bounced off stone walls.
Every muscle in her body screamed to rise, but she forced herself to wait, to let the moment land fully, to let them understand.
In the back pew, the dark green wool shifted. Captain Sarah Mitchell unfolded her body, rising with a calibrated stillness. A collective gasp funneled through the church. 60 knees creaked as mourners turned, their mouths falling open. Patricia lunged half out of the pew, her hand stretched toward the aisle as if she could claw the air and reverse it.
She can't be here. This is some mistake.
The honor guards stood immovable, their eyes forward, as if they had expected her all along. Sarah stepped into the aisle, her heels echoing on the plank floor, and began the long walk toward her father. Whispers ignited. Captain Mitchell. The word captain passed from lip to lip like a fuse burning.
You have no right. You abandoned us.
Sarah did not flinch. Her eyes were fixed on the casket, not the voices. Her pace didn't change. As she reached the front, the gunnery sergeant raised his hand in a crisp salute, his voice steady as a bell. At a quiet command from the gunnery sergeant, 8 Marines stepped forward and lifted the flag from the casket, their movements precise as a silent machine.
She had witnessed this ritual 100 times. On tarmacs, in cemeteries, under foreign sun. Now it enfolded him.
The white gloves passed the fabric in unison, the stripes disappearing into a tight, perfect triangle that held everything unsaid. The gunnery sergeant received the folded colors, turned, and extended them towards Sarah with both hands, his gaze unbroken.
Captain Mitchell, on behalf of the President and the United States Marine Corps, please accept this flag as a symbol of our gratitude for your father's legacy and your own service.
Her father had held her hand with those same rough palms when she was a girl, teaching her to tie a fishing knot. Now she held his memory.
Patricia tore free from Robert's grip and lunged forward, her voice cracking.
That flag is mine. He was my husband, not hers. She doesn't belong here.
Robert grabbed his mother's arm, his own face pale as a sheet, and hissed at her.
Stop it, Mother. Not here. Can't you see they're all watching?
Sarah pressed the flag flat against her ribbons and turned to face the congregation, her back to the casket.
One sentence. One sentence to undo 20 years of lies.
She spoke, and her voice carried to the last pew without a microphone, clear as a bell over a battlefield.
My father knew I was alive. He called me every Sunday from Kandahar. He never believed the story you just heard.
Patricia's shriek strangled in her throat, and Robert swayed as if struck. The mourner's head swiveled, jaws hanging, as 2 decades of careful manipulation began to collapse under a single voice.
3 years ago, he wrote me a letter. He said he should have been stronger. He said he was proud of the captain I'd become.
The gunnery sergeant's eyes met hers, and he gave the barest nod, a silent salute to the truth. Then Sarah lifted the folded flag slightly, and the room held its breath, waiting for the words that would seal the reversal.
He was not alone. He had me, and I am here to honor him the way he deserved, in truth.
The minister stumbled through a final blessing, his voice thin. The organist fumbled into a closing hymn, but no one sang. People peeled from the pews in slow motion, casting shell-shocked glances at Patricia and Robert, who stood like statues at the front.
This is not over. You don't get to waltz in here in that uniform and rewrite years of.
But Gunnery Sergeant Webb was already there, an immovable wall of dress blue between her and Sarah.
Ma'am, Captain Mitchell is under the protection of the United States Marine Corps until she exits this premises. Stand down.
Mother, please. Just, let's go.
Outside, the noon sun hit Sarah's face as she stepped onto the church steps, the folded flag pressed to her chest.
Sarah, I was so scared they'd do something worse. I'm sorry I didn't call you earlier.
You told me that's what matters, but I need to know everything else my father was trying to say.
The gunnery sergeant paused beside her, pressing a small card into her white glove. If you need a witness to what occurred, Captain, the Corps stands with its own.
There's a wake reception at the town hall, but I didn't want you to walk in blind. There's a lawyer coming.
A lawyer? For what?
Your father changed his will 3 years ago. Patricia and Robert don't know, but Alan Morris will be there to read it.
A fresh urgency tightened around Sarah's ribs. Her father had been preparing for this day. She pressed the folded flag against her chest, the card from Gunnery Sergeant Webb tucked into her glove, and walked with Emma toward the hall. The community hall across the road was already filling with clusters of mourners whispering behind coffee cups. Patricia and Robert arrived, her mascara streaky, his collar damp with sweat, dodging glances that had turned from sympathy to suspicion. A low rumble of conversation shifted as Sarah entered, the flag still in her arms, her uniform impossibly sharp under the fluorescent lights. Through the window, a black sedan pulled up. Alan Morris stepped out, briefcase in hand, his silhouette a harbinger of the reckoning to come.
He knew. My father knew what would happen, and he made sure I'd walk in with the truth on my chest.
Alan Morris stepped into the hall, his briefcase held tight against his side, and every conversation faltered. Patricia spotted him, and her face drained to the color of wet paper. She grabbed Robert's arm.
We didn't approve any legal proceeding here. This is a family wake, not a courtroom.
The reading of the last will and testament of Thomas Mitchell was requested by the deceased himself. I am bound to honor it.
The mourners circled closer, coffee cups forgotten, a tidal wave of curiosity and unease rippling through the hall.
You cannot do this in front of everyone. This is a private family matter, and I demand you leave.
If my father wanted this read, then it gets read. I'm here, and I'm not leaving.
Robert lurched forward, but two men from the crowd caught his arms, holding him back as his face purpled. Alan Morris unsnapped his briefcase and drew out a thick sealed envelope, the silence now absolute.
I, Thomas Mitchell, being of sound mind, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament, revoking all prior documents. I bequeath to my wife, Patricia Mitchell, the sum of $1, for she has taken from me what no money can replace.
No, he wouldn't. You're lying. This is forged.
Let me see that document. You can't do this to us. We were the ones who cared for him.
To my son, Robert Mitchell, I leave nothing but the knowledge that a man's first duty is to truth, not loyalty to a false mother.
The crowd rippled with sharp breaths. Patricia swayed, her hand clawing at a folding chair.
He spoke from the grave. Every Sunday, every Skype, every letter, this was what he built.
To my daughter, Captain Sarah Mitchell, I leave the house on Willow Lane, the fishing boat's second chance, and all remaining assets of my estate.
Patricia slumped, her knees buckling, and two women caught her before she hit the floor.
And there is a sealed letter, to be read by you alone, Captain. Your father instructed that it be given only to you.
Sarah took the envelope and slid it into her uniform beside the flag. She did not open it yet, but her gloved hand rested over it, as if holding her father's hand one last time. The hall emptied slowly, mourners avoiding Patricia and Robert as if they carried something infectious.
Sarah, what does it say? Do you want me to stay while you read it?
He wanted me to read it alone. I'll open it when I'm ready, not here.
This isn't over, Sarah. You may have fooled them, but we'll contest every single word.
Sarah looked at him without anger, only exhaustion. The fight had already drained out of her.
You've stolen everything from me. My husband, my home, my son's inheritance.
You stole him from me for 20 years. I'm just taking back what he gave me in the end.
She turned, the flag cradled against her, and walked toward the door without another word. Emma followed, but Sarah gave a small shake of her head. She needed to be alone with her father. The marina was only a few miles away. She knew exactly where she had to go. She parked near the empty marina, the flag and letters still pressed tight against her uniform as she stepped out. The boat's second chance rocked gently at the end of the dock, its paint faded but its lines as clean as she remembered. She stepped aboard, her polished shoes finding the worn boards that her father had varnished 100 times. Her white glove brushed the handrail, and for a breath, she felt the ghost of his rough palm beside hers.
She remembered sitting right here, holding a fishing line, watching him whistle at the gulls.
She sat down at the stern, the folded flag on the seat beside her, the sealed envelope resting in her lap.
He would want me to open this out there, where the water meets the sky.
Her mind was made. She would read it on the water, the way he'd have wanted, with the wind as witness. The engine coughed once, then hummed to life, its familiar rumble vibrating through the hull like an old song. The boat turned toward open water, and Sarah pressed the envelope against her heart as the sun dipped into the lake. She cut the engine and let the boat drift, the only sound the water lapping against the hull. With trembling hands, she broke the seal on the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper, covered in her father's handwriting. My dear Sarah, if you are reading this, I am gone. I've known for years that your mother and brother lied to keep us apart. Every Sunday you called from some dusty base, and you never knew I was counting the minutes. I kept those calls a secret because she would have taken them from me too. I should have been stronger. I let her poison our family, and I died knowing the best thing I ever did was father a daughter brave enough to walk into a war zone. The boat is yours. The house is yours. But mostly I hope you will remember that I am sorry. Sorry I let her keep us apart. Sarah's tears dropped onto the paper, smudging the ink of the final line. She pressed the flag to her face and sobbed without sound.
He knew. He always knew.
She reached into her uniform and pulled out a small wooden urn she'd received from the funeral director after the ceremony, her father's ashes inside. She opened it and let the ashes drift into the twilight sky, a quiet prayer on her lips, the flag cradled against her heart. The last particles of ash vanished into the dark water, and the sky deepened to a bruised purple. She folded the letter carefully, tucked it into her uniform pocket, and pulled the flag tighter against her chest.
He didn't die believing I abandoned him. He died knowing I loved him.
Her phone buzzed. A string of texts from Emma about the will contest and a message from the lawyer. Emma's text read, "They tried to contest. Morris shut them down. The house and boat are yours. It's really over."
Over. After 20 years. The word barely made sense.
She set the phone aside. The battle her family started had finally ended, in a courtroom, a church, and a quiet lake. Her fingers brushed her captain's bars, and she smiled into the darkness.
Every Sunday, Dad. I'll take her out every Sunday.
She started the engine and turned for the marina, the weight of 20 years replaced by a quiet, certain peace. She guided Second Chance back to the marina, its navigation lights glowing red and green against the dark water.
Home.
The engine died, and she tied the boat to the dock with the same knot her father had taught her, strong, tight, eternal. The marina was silent, the only audience a scatter of stars. She gathered the flag and the letter from the boat seat.
He gave me a second chance. Not just the boat, everything.
She walked up the dock, her polished shoes quiet on the wood, the flag pressed against her ribbons. At the top of the ramp, she turned and looked back at the boat, its name barely visible in the moonlight.
I'll be back Sunday, Dad. I'll bring the flag.
She walked to her parked sedan, the first hint of gray light beginning to streak the sky over the lake. The flag lay on the passenger seat as she started the ignition. She didn't look back again. She was already home. The sedan rolled through the empty streets of Willow Creek as the first light of morning painted the rooftops. She pulled into the gravel driveway of the house on Willow Lane, the porch light still glowing. The key turned smoothly in the lock, and she stepped inside, the flag cradled under her arm. The living room smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and old wood. She walked to the mantelpiece. There, beside a framed photo of her father at the helm of Second Chance, she placed the folded flag. She stepped back, came to attention, and raised her hand in a slow, deliberate salute. Then she sank onto the worn leather couch, the letter still folded in her pocket, and finally let the stillness settle.
It's over, Dad. I'm home.
Outside, the sun broke over the lake, spilling gold through the window. The house was silent, but not empty. It was filled with the truth. And somewhere on the lake, a boat named Second Chance rocked gently, waiting for Sunday. Sunday morning broke over the marina, gold lights spilling across the dock where Second Chance waited. Sarah stepped aboard, still in her dress blues, the folded flag cradled under one arm. She placed the flag on the seat beside her helm, her white glove resting on it a moment longer than necessary. From her pocket, she pulled a small framed photo, her father at the helm, grinning into the sun, and set it on the dashboard. The engine hummed to life, and she eased the boat away from the dock into the glassy golden water. Her face was calm, the weight gone, only the quiet rhythm of the water and the light on the wheel.
I promise, Dad. Every Sunday, I'll bring the flag.
The boat cut a slow arc toward open water, her silhouette sharp against the rising sun. The folded flag and the letter rested together on the seat, bathed in the same light that had once touched his hands. Captain Sarah Mitchell stood at the helm, and for the first time in years, she was not alone.